Welcome back to episode 4 of our Borealis XL Kayak build. In today's episode, we're going to start off by gluing together our keel seam, first by mixing some epoxy, and then putting that epoxy into the syringes that come with the kit to lay a bead of epoxy down that seam. You're just going to evenly spread the epoxy down the seam of the keel line from the front temporary frame to the rear temporary frame. After you've glued your keel seam together, we're going to go ahead and attach some stands to our temporary frames that we'll use as we flip our boat over to work on the bottom side of the boat. While we're here, we're also going to hot glue the temporary frames holding our boat together so that they'll stay in place once we remove the tie wires. Once we have our boat flipped over, we're going to start off by ensuring that our bow and stern ends are aligned. And I'm just going to use a straight edge for this to get these as lined up best that I can. And then we're going to go ahead and tighten down the wires. Once you have the front ending and the rear end of your boat done, you're going to go ahead and tighten all the wires on the rest of the boat. Once that's done, you're going to mix up more epoxy and put into the syringes, and you're going to glue those outside keel seams together. After you let your epoxy cure, you're going to go ahead and sand down the roughest spots and where you've got drips. And you're going to may find use to a wood file as I'm using here to get some of the big parts, but definitely you're going to want to work your way down to some fine grit sandpaper to really just smooth everything out so that the epoxy and fiberglass will lay flat as we get ready to cover the entire bottom side of the hull. You can see here I'm mixing up epoxy about 6 ounces at a time at our normal ratio and pouring into a paint rolling pan. And I'm going to use a foam roller to go ahead and put a saturation coat of epoxy across the entire hull. I'm going to end up putting 2 of these coats on to make sure that your hull is saturated, and then you're going to let those cure and dry so that your fiberglass will run smoothly across it when we're ready to do the full boat. Using a foam tipped brush to just work out any air bubbles as the epoxy begins to set up. Now we're ready to laminate the outside of the hull. We're going to begin by spreading a layer of 38-inch wide, 6-ounce glass cloth over the entire hull. Align it so that it hangs 1 inch over the shear on one side and smooth it out over the bottom. On the bow end of the boat, the cloth will conform to the shape of the hull by smoothing it with your hands. The angle of the stern is too steep to allow the cloth to lay down without bunching. You'll need to cut the cloth at the stern, removing excess cloth. This is done with 3 cuts resulting in 2 flaps, each overlapping the stern by 2 inches. Once you've got your glass smoothed over the hull, you're going to mix up your epoxy 6 ounces at a time. Mix it thoroughly and pour it either into a paint tray or onto the surface itself and spread with a foam roller. As you're foam rolling, you'll be squeegeeing each patch that you complete, working from the stern out, squeegeeing excess epoxy. After you've completed glassing your hull, you're going to wait 3 to 4 hours and come back with a razor knife and cut off the excess fiberglass that's hanging over the edge. That's it for this week's episode. You've got the underside hull of your boat fiberglass and ready to rock and roll. See you in the next episode.